If you want to learn the Badass Agile way up close and personal and experience what previous members have experienced in terms of career change, new opportunity, greater confidence, greater success, there's only one way to get your anvil, and that's to come out to the Badass Agile Forge. It's a year-long leadership immersion experience, and we're opening up a cohort for December 2020. So click the links down below to be part of the next group of elite leaders. I look forward to seeing you there. Greetings, team, and welcome to another episode of Badass Unscripted. C-Dubs here. Hope you're all getting along okay during this quarantine business. And for today, I want to talk about talking about improvement versus doing it. The strangest thing can happen with people. They can sign up for, let's say, a self-improvement program or an educational program, pay tons of money for it, and then not do the work and flunk out. Well, why is that exactly? You know, I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. I think sometimes in life we've all experienced that sensation of wanting an outcome because it looks good or it sounds good. But when the time comes to stare down the barrel of the amount of work that it takes to actually get the improvement or get the result, I think sometimes it's very different. And whether it's because we're scared or we're not ready, the excuse almost doesn't matter. It's just not time. It just ain't gonna happen. But of course, as a coach or anybody trying to get great performance out of a team, this is the last thing that we want to have happen. We don't want people to make excuses. We want them to take the learning, take the improvement, and then crush it. Like imagine doing a retrospective and being vulnerable enough to identify a problem and even then come up with an experiment that we think might help and then not follow through. I mean, it makes the retrospective kind of pointless, right? If you're any kind of leader trying to drive improvement, this is a disaster. So what do? Well, to make sure you're doing excellence rather than just talking about it, the first thing you need to do is realize that this is a human condition. If you think you're ever going to get 100% uptake on any step towards excellence, on any discipline, you're nuts. It's totally counterintuitive. It's totally frustrating and hair-pulling, and I feel for you, but that's just the reality. So first things first is set your expectations accordingly. There will always be someone who should want it, who should get it, who doesn't. Now, to maximize your chances that doesn't happen, the first thing I recommend is that you break down improvements into smaller pieces, smaller, demonstrable pieces where the end result can be seen more quickly. Whenever I give people coaching, I always say, you'll see like a small difference in a couple of days or a week. In a few weeks, your friends are going to notice the difference. But it's going to take months or maybe longer before you can say you're completely transformed, where you don't recognize the person that you used to be. And I think you should offer that to people whenever you're trying to move them towards excellence. Whatever behavior you want them to adopt, whatever habit you're trying to build, do it in small pieces first. So even a tiny change, like let's make sure we speak about blockers every time we stand up. Don't forget that part. Even if you feel like you don't have blockers, let's talk about them. If that means saying no blockers, great. But let's not skip over it. So suppose you introduce that habit, and in a day or two, forcing everyone to use the word blocker, let's imagine that it creates some kind of result. All of a sudden, we tend to jump on or swarm blockers easier because what we used to do in the past is brush them under the rug. So now that we're calling this behavior out, we're making the change, let's imagine things get a little bit better. Now you can go see, how's that feel? What do you notice is different? What's working for you now that wasn't working for you before? And they get to own the change. And they get to own the feeling of having solved a problem for themselves. All you did was point. All you did was suggest. All you did was hold them accountable. So let's say they all get really excited. And they're like, yeah, we should talk about blockers every day. So you do it, and then things get really busy. You get really close to a deadline, and slowly you notice people start to drop it. Or maybe you notice there's one or two people who just never really get the hang of it. So what do? Well, here's the crucial moment. If you try to force it on them with carrots and sticks, where does it end? Maybe you convince them through constant reminder and bossing people around that, hey, you guys promised you're going to talk about blockers every day and you're not doing it. Shame on you. And that's never going to work. What will work is to just, bring it out into the light and say, hey, I notice we're not calling out our blockers. Let me ask you, is this something that you want me to hold you accountable for? And if they say no, if all of a sudden they realize, no, we don't really want your help on this one. Well, great. Ask them what they do want to be held accountable for. Because as a coach, that's part of your job. And maybe they'll reveal to you that this just, at the end of the day, this wasn't important enough to them, and they found something else that they really want your help sticking to, habitualizing. Well, great. Give them that instead. But if they do say, no, this is what we want. We want to be held accountable for raising and honoring blockers, and say, okay, gotcha, we'll do. And then the next time that it doesn't happen in the stand-up, you can say, listen, guys, not for nothing, but you asked me to hold you accountable to raising your blockers. So where'd you go? See, when they own the push, when they own the coaching, they're likely to respond to it way better. And because you kept the outcome and the commitment small, then, if the experiment doesn't work, they're comfortable throwing it away, trying something else. But if it does, they're comfortable adding it to their repertoire because, hey, it takes 4 seconds a day to say no blockers instead of just going silent at the end of your update. Now, once you've incorporated that, now it's a habit. You can simply move on to the next one. And in my experience, this creates much better cohesion. But it's also kind of hands-free. It's like, listen, if you want to get better at this, I'm here to help you. But if you're not interested, I'm not going to force you. I already do this. I already knock my blockers out of the park every day. So this isn't for me. This has to matter to you, or you will never do the work required to stick with it, to make it a practice and incorporate it into your soul. Now, if you're saying, yeah, but this team is like super undisciplined and they're really not committing to anything. Well, if you start small and you work with the commitments that they are willing to make, then it becomes easier to build new commitments as a habit. But one thing for sure that we agree won't work is if you try to force it on them. But small incremental progress over time is lower risk, lower fear, lower commitment. And as they begin to see results, then they have and own the aha moment for themselves. Now that's something that you can build on. Make sense? All right, guys, gotta run. Hey, I love you because you're crazy. You can reach out at badassagile.com. You can find me on Twitter at badass_agile or on Instagram at badassagile. See you next time. Till then, stay badass.